Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat and this is Living Solo, Living Well. And today I wanted to talk about something that happened last week and it totally took me by surprise. I was completely blindsided and it just came from out of the blue. So as many of you know, I have mentioned in other videos that I was looking for some PRN nursing jobs. I'm a nurse, I'm a registered nurse, and I was looking for several different PRN jobs. I had applied at several and was looking to have one or two maybe just to kind of generate some more income and get me out of the house. And so I was hired at a facility a few weeks ago, maybe several weeks ago. I had an interview with a director and a nurse manager. And the nurse manager, because I had seen patients at this facility while working at another job, I knew this nurse manager. I knew of her. I've dealt with her a few times, and she loved me and sang my praises to the director at this interview several weeks ago. So we had a great interview. I was sitting there, everything was very relaxed, and the nurse manager had given her recommendation because she'd seen me working in the other capacity, the other job I used to work at, when I would come to this facility to see hospice patients. So I had her blessing, her backing, and the director I had never met until the interview. So everything went great. The director was thrilled. It was a very relaxed conversation. And as much as I thought, I don't need this job because it's the drama, oh my gosh, the stress, the 12-hour shifts, but I did it anyway. I went for the interview because I thought this is a quicker way to get some income generated. And I probably would not stay at that job very long if I found something that was more suitable. So anyway, they hired me and I went through all the paperwork. We did all the stuff. I went in on a particular day for training for about 5 hours, and I was a nurse training with a nurse that was on this floor, on this hall, but she also was kind of retraining another newer nurse. This nurse was hired several months ago. She was out on medical leave for an accident, unexpected, injury. And then she came back. So she's kind of refreshing her skills. So she was kind of training as well as me. So I was more just observing because it was my first day learning their system and what have you. So anyway, I overheard someone say my name and said something about going with a patient. And I didn't know what that was. So I asked the nurse who was training me, the preceptor, I said, what is that all about? I heard my name. And she said, oh, you're going to go with a patient that has to have a procedure at the hospital. And their procedure is at 10 a.m. And my plan, my arrangement was to be off at noon because I had another obligation after that. So I had to be off by noon so I could have my lunch and then be elsewhere. So here I was trying to get the details. Nobody knew any details. They didn't know when I'd be leaving. And I was limited on my availability for training because of some other obligations I have at this moment or during the next several weeks. So the director knew that. So I gave her 5 hours that day, or 5.5 hours that day. And so generally at this type of facility, a skilled nursing facility, the training is very, very minimal at best. They think or they say that training will be X number of days or a couple weeks or what have you. But once you're training, before, like say you've had 2 or 3 days of training, they will come to you and say, oh, we're short-staffed. We need you on this hall. We don't have anybody. This happened where I used to work. And I said, I'm not trained yet. Oh, yes, you are. You can do it. You can do it. They just want a warm body to pass out the meds. They don't care if you're not trained or if you don't know what you're doing. As long as somebody's over there, they're okay with that, which is ridiculous because so many things can happen. So anyway, I was trying to get information about the details for doing this riding with transport. A company was picking up the patient. They dropped them off at the doorway of the hospital. So somebody's got to be there to kind of assist them on their appointment. So they were throwing me into that, and I was needing clarification because I needed to leave by noon. And this is one of my training days. So I knew on down the road, if something came up and I said, well, I haven't had enough training, they would have included that day as a training day. Oh, yeah, you came in on that day. Even if I was gone with the patient at the hospital for their procedure. No training whatsoever. So I went to the manager, nursing manager, and the one who sang my praises gave me a good recommendation. And I told her, I said, I'm a little confused because I don't know what the details are. I've got to be back by noon because I have another appointment. And I'm very limited on hours to come in and train. I don't have full days, I have partial days. And she blew up and she didn't know the details. It was like she was irritated that I asked about it. And she said, I don't know. You'll just have to, I don't know. You'll have to ask so-and-so. So I asked so-and-so. So-and-so did not know and said, go talk to the manager. I said, I did. And this is what she said. So I went back to the manager's office and I had, again, addressed that, I'm a little concerned because I need to know. I need to make sure I'm done by noon and back. I'm home or back to the facility by noon so I can leave because this was already prearranged. And it didn't go anywhere. Again, she blew up, almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of just changed, just flipped on a dime. And so I went back out on the hall where the nurse was, where the med cart was, and I texted the director and I asked her the same thing. I pretty much had the same conversation in that text message as I had with the manager both times. So I heard nothing from this director. And then I also heard that 10 o'clock was this patient's procedure time. And I thought for this particular procedure, there would be no way that they would be out by noon. There would be no way because I know about this procedure. So I waited. I did not get a response from the director. So I was up at the nurse's station doing some stuff. And then a little bit later, she walked in and passed me. And I said, oh, did you get my message, my text? And she curtly said no as she walked past me. So I didn't think anything of it. So I followed her to the office. And then I said, well, I was concerned about blah, blah, blah. And I explained to her exactly what I said in the text message, which was exactly what I said to the nurse manager. And I was gaslit. It was incredible. I just watched this unfold right before my eyes. She said, I thought since you went to RN school that you'd be comfortable doing this. And I said, it's not that I'm uncomfortable. I don't know the details. I'd like to know the details because I've got to leave by noon and, nobody knows anything to tell me. And then she got a little snippy again and said, well, it's taken care of. And I said, so I'm not going. And she said, no, I've taken care of it. So, which tells me she knew what my text message had said. So I just have a gut feeling. So then I said, well, no one told me I wasn't going. And she said, well, that's because you said you weren't going to go. And I said, that I never said that, nor would I ever. And she said, well, that's what was told to me in a real curt, sharp tone. And I said, I never said that, nor would I ever. I was asking for details. And so anyway, the discussion ended. I was just kind of, dumbfounded. So I walked out and I spoke to another nurse friend there who had come by just, incidentally. And I mentioned this to her, and we were over in the corner, and she said, so-and-so, the director, is known for making up lies. So either the director lied about me and made it up, or the manager lied to the director and said that I told her I was not going. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going. That never happened. So my first day of orientation was, they accused me of lying. And that just kind of hit wrong because this is a new job. The director was, seemed to be very nice at the interview. And in fact, after the interview, my good friend, who's a nurse as well, had asked me how the interview went. And I said, oh, it went great. We had a great rapport, sitting there laughing, and just everything was great. But I feel like the director is one to watch. I said she was super nice. Everything was great. But I feel like she can turn on a dime, just, at the blink of an eye. And so twice before I went in for orientation like last week, on 2 different occasions. So on that first occasion where I said, I feel like she's one to watch, I also said that another time about her to that same friend because of maybe something in a text, I'm not sure. So I was just blown away because if you know anything about any videos I've done, and I've mentioned in some of the videos that I was bullied as a brand new nurse, and it was continued at several different jobs that I had. And I would quit jobs because of that, because it was blatant. Everybody noticed it, and I had no way to combat it. I did report it at the very first nursing job, and it went nowhere. So it went to an ethics hotline that the company has as part of their benefits. So it's part of the company. And I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. Well, I had hoped it would. I was a new nurse, so I didn't really know the inner workings of the nursing world, but it went nowhere. I was told that everything's fine. She didn't do that really. She didn't grab your arm. She didn't pull you towards her. No, she didn't do that. So I had a really hard time this go round because of the past lies and gaslighting and treatment and bullying that I endured. So, surprisingly enough, this goes on in nursing. There's an old saying that nurses eat their young, and I'm sure in a lot of other occupations they have the same kind of thing. But this is a helping profession. This should not be, we should not be afraid of being chastised because we're new nurses. I'm not anymore. I've been a nurse since 2012. So to have to put up with this, especially at this age, I'm a grown up and you're not going to talk to me that way. But I decided that I'm not going to work with that company. But I stayed because I was debating whether or not I should leave, just walk out. But the thing in nursing is if you have a patient assignment, so if you're assigned to a hall or any patients at all, they can accuse you of patient abandonment. And that's a big ding on your license. That doesn't look good with the Board of Nursing. And however, I did not have a patient hall or list assigned to me. I was training, so I was not the one in charge of the patients. It wasn't an assignment I accepted. So I knew none of these patients at all. So anyway, I stayed because I thought I'll finish out the shift and I'll just wait to see kind of how the day goes until noon. So anyway, the more I thought about it, the more I had steam coming out my ears. I was fuming, and I was counting down the time to when 12 o'clock would be here because I could not wait to get out of there. When you see someone's true colors, you got to make a decision right then. I never did that in the past. The reason being, I was a new nurse, but when something like that happens, it's never happened before. I've never had that happen ever. And when something like that happens, it's like you're gobsmacked. You are trying to figure out what just happened. What in the world just happened? And you're trying to process it, but you're trying to do your job. So there's a whole lot of confusion. There's a whole lot of doubt, self-doubt. And then you're trying to relive that conversation and the events leading up to it to see if maybe you could have done something different. What did I do for her to say that? What did I do? It must be something I'm doing, but I knew deep down it wasn't. I knew that this was not right, and it had to be dealt with. So because I had, I guess you could say, accepted the behavior in the past, because I didn't confront anybody or leave, I stayed. I was the loyal employee, and I did the right thing. I made sure I didn't step on anybody's toes. I tried to stay out of the limelight. I tried to stay out of the bullseye. I wanted to lay low and just do my job and get through the day, not have any trouble. And so all the work and the blame, it almost kind of seemed like I put that on myself to change. Okay, well, I've got to do this. I've got to be different. I've got to just toughen up. And so I did. I toughened up, but it still occurred. It occurred. I ended up leaving that first job eventually when nothing was done, but the behavior continued. So I ended up leaving that job, and next couple jobs I found, they're over time, they began some tactics like this, gaslighting and bullying. And anyway, so this particular job that I was at last week, I thought, this is, no, not going to do it. I cannot continue, because if I had explained myself and tried to defend myself and go through a story of, oh, no, I never said that. I was, if I was kissing her butt, so to speak, trying to make her believe my side of the story, that means I'm feeding into what she wants. She could care less what my story is. A narcissistic, gaslighting, lying boss does not care what your side of the story is. They were told this, that must be true. So, there was so much I wanted to say, but I wasn't going to get reeled into her world. And I wanted to say that, the conversation didn't go that way. You weren't here. I never said that. I just simply, matter-of-factly said, I never said that, nor would I ever. I didn't go into explaining. I did say the second time, I just needed clarification. And I never went into all the explanation, no tears, no, you don't believe me? I never did anything like that, because for a narcissist or a gaslighting person, they don't want to hear it. They don't care. They want you under their thumb, under their control. They want to get you to the point of submission where they now are the one to, I guess, obviously she's the boss, but they want to be in control. And so you are whipped into shape, and that's not happening. That was not happening whatsoever. I was needing clarification, and she didn't even have the respect to ask me my side of the story. She was already one-sided. She's going with that story, and that's it. So I did not speak to her before I left. I didn't see her. And when I left. I got in the car. When I got in the car and I shut the door, I said, what in the blankety blank blank just happened? It was so bizarre. And I thought, all the times I thought, against my better judgment, I'm going to apply at that place. Against my better judgment, I'm going to start at that place. Against my better judgment, I'm going to work there for a little while and see if it's any different. And I just want to laugh, because it's a different location, but it's the same thing. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And I will say that again, nothing changes if nothing changes. So I was determined to change things. I'm changing the trajectory of her ability to gaslight me and to accept or expect me to accept her interpretation of what this other person said without getting some clarification on my part. So anyway, I am not going back to that job, and I did end up finding two other very PRN positions. They are sedentary, which is good for me because they're not sedentary completely, but they are mostly sedentary for the most part, because I have issues with my back. Because I was on my feet for a couple of hours during that orientation, and then at my next appointment, I had been on my feet for a while because that is one of the positions I took, eventually was offered and accepted. But during that interview, there was a tour of the factory where I would be an occupational health nurse, PRN. I would be in an office, but they wanted me to tour the factory to see what they manufacture. So I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting an hour-long walk on concrete throughout the entire facility. It was humongous. And so combined, both of those, I had severe excruciating pain in my upper back from where I had a fracture 4 years ago. So anyway, I had been praying about, I don't want that job. I don't want to work at that facility. It's drama. It's 12-hour shifts. It's the same stuff as before and different location. And so God answered my prayers by having this incident occur, and that's my answer. I'm not to have that job. I'm not going to have that job. They don't know yet, but they'll know soon when they contact me to come in for more training. So I feel that's fair. If they want to do this to me, then they have to wait until they contact me, and I will let them know so that it's not going to work out. They're not a good fit for me. I don't want to say that I'm not a good fit for them. They're not a good fit for me. And in a sense, I'm not a good fit for them because I don't bow down to what they expect or how they treat you, how they expect you to be treated. And we're just not doing that. So I'm thrilled that it turned out that way because ultimately that made the decision for me, and that influenced my decision to not take that position. And the other two came up. I was offered at both of these jobs. They're both wonderful, local, not your typical nursing job, and it's nothing like that place. So anyway, recognizing when you're being gaslit is very important for your mental health, because I've got the itchy nose again today. The mental health portion, you've got to have things that enhance your positive mental health. If you're gaslit, if you're lied about, the very first day they did not know me as an employee at all, and they are coming out with, well, you lied, you said this, they said you said this, that's what was told to me, you said this. No, that's not what happened. So I'm trying to preserve what little bit of sanity I have. I was bullied when I was injured at a workplace job 4 years ago when I had a bad fall, and I was treated badly from the day I went back until the day I was fired, wrongful termination, and that turned out to my benefit. So I was not going to put up with it again. I've seen it, I've lived it, I've done it. I'm not doing it anymore. And they've just lost an employee. So a good employee, I'm a great employee, I'm a great nurse. I feel like I take care of my patients very well, and I follow the rules, and I do the best I can do. So they don't get to see that, and that's their loss. So anyway, pay attention to what gaslighting is. Little subtle ways, sometimes very covert, sometimes overt. So the dig she made when she said, I thought since you went to RN school that you'd be fine going with this patient. So that's another little dig to where you're going to go, well, I am a good nurse. Of course I'd be great with this patient. I'm a good nurse. Don't say I'm not a good nurse. So there were a couple of different gaslighting things that she used, at times that she gaslit me. And again, I was able to recognize it. I was able to not fall into that trap. And I left there pretty much unscathed, and I'm not going back. So if I never see the inside of that facility or their parking lot again, that'll be too soon. So anyway, on that note, I hope you guys have a great week, and watch for the signs, the subtle signs of gaslighting, because they're there. And when you see them, you take control over your life. So Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.